Let's give it a second here. Going live. Here we are. Here we are, John Baxter Live. I've got an exciting show for you today. We've got three doctors on our show, just talking about amazing technology, innovations in this industry of health and wellness. And these are the top guys out there. I feel very grateful, honored to have some amazing guests on today. You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned the whole time. And we'll get down to the nitty gritty about hydrogen water. And this may be a subject that you don't know about, but you'll get all the facts today. I'm going to introduce a guy named Dr. Paul, and I don't want to mess up his last name, but he's an amazing guy. He spent 15 years in water and now has the top water technology out there. We've got Dr. Mike Van Thielen. He's been a regular guest of mine. Just an amazing guy, world record holder among holding a doctorate degree in a couple different genres of health, and an author. And we've got Dr. Greg, co-founder of Anti-Aging Bed. Real quick, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys, do a screen share, and we're going to show Dr. Paul's website here before we get going. And it's Synergy Science. So if you want to know more about Dr. Paul, his technology, go to synergyscience.com. He's got the Echo water system, just an amazing hydrogen water system that I found at one of these shows. Now, you might have heard of water before. We'll cover all those topics today. So we're talking this and a little bit about the sponsor today is Anti-Aging Bed. Got the new website up, beautiful company, and just amazing products. And I'm not going to take it much longer with the intro here. I want to get right to the nitty gritty. And let's see here. I don't know if you guys saw that. Okay, now I'm screen sharing. Here we go. Here's Dr. Paul's website, Synergy Science, like I was saying, synergyscience.com. There'll be a link below if you want to get more information, 10% off the system. And I'm going to get Dr. Paul on right now. Okay, and yeah, if we could stand by, got a little audio check, and give it 1 second, guys. Sorry about that. I'm going to introduce Dr. Paul, the Synergy Science CEO.
How you doing?
How are you doing? Doing good. Doing good. I was going to ask you some questions here,
Sure.
and I'm going to get these other guys on. Dr. Mike Van Thielen is on the show today, and Dr. Greg Carter. So we've
Awesome.
got a amazing group of guys here, and I'm sure we got a lot of questions. But Dr. Paul, could you go over how long you've been working in the water systems and technology and innovations, and how long this took you to get to this level?
Well, thank you. I started in the water industry about 17 years ago. And really, when I became aware of hydrogen, when I became aware that hydrogen really was the mechanism of the reason why these waters were healing people. I started developing a machine, and 10 years ago now is when I developed the Echo brand, really with a focus on hydrogen gas. And it all started wanting to heal my wife. It helped my wife. She had thyroid issues, gynecological issues. She had a number of things, anemia, high level anemia going on. And so I really that's what caused me to do this in the first place. And now of course we've helped millions of others.
Oh, that's amazing. I know I saw the Echo Water system 10 years ago at a vibration therapy store. So
Yeah.
you were already on my radar a long time ago, and
Mhm.
just by that synergistic effect, we got to meet. So,
Awesome.
um, one of the things when you talk about hydrogen, how does your water system create the hydrogen? Can you talk about how it's introduced and from the time you pour it and you're drinking it, how that hydrogen works and how your system uh, creates that innovation to have hydrogen put into the water?
Awesome. Yes. So our hydrogen module, as we call it, is proprietary, and it does something that. Oh, sorry, I saved you from that.
Bless you. Sorry.
Um, I effectively we're separating water molecules. So inside of our proprietary hydrogen module, if you can imagine H2O as a water molecule, there is no hydrogen gas in water, but there is a molecule that's comprised of hydrogen and oxygen gas. We separate H2 and O, and we put oxygen out to the environment where people can breathe it. We dissolve the H2 gas into the water, and it has pure H2 gas into pure water. So that is what we're doing. We do not change the pH of the water. I know there are many systems out there that have alkaline systems, but we absolutely know as medical professionals that the pH of water doesn't matter to the body. In fact, it doesn't even get through the stomach acid. It's buffered almost immediately. So and we have many studies now showing that the pH of the water is not what's important. What matters is having the hydrogen gas and the ORP, the electrical potential. So my focus was creating a system that would dissolve hydrogen gas to a therapeutic concentration and then not increase the pH of the water, because that can cause about 15% of the population. They can have what's called a Hertzheimer effect if you give them water that's a higher pH, because it throws their body balance off. So this is a big difference. Now, the other proprietary aspects of our hydrogen module is that the water you're drinking is never in contact with the electrodes, unlike alkaline water machines where the water you're drinking is absolutely directly in contact with the electrodes. In our hydrogen module, the water you're drinking is never in contact with the electrodes in the system, and that's critical to make sure you're never introducing metals into the water. And then secondly, in the chamber, the cathode itself is never in contact with water, so you can't ever have mineral buildup, because that's going to stop hydrogen production.
Well, that is amazing. I'm not sure how long that took you and you spoke about it, but as an innovator myself, that is awesome. I'm glad that the world gets to utilize and maximize this type of technology. And what is the importance of hydrogen water as far as the way that our cellular structure reacts with water? Is hydrogen gonna, to our cells? Is it purifying? Is it connecting? Uh,
So, hydrogen, to answer this question, I want to back up and talk about how the body is designed and how the body is supposed to function. So, we are supposed to produce hydrogen gas in our gut, and that is to reduce oxidation in the body. And so it's critical that we reduce oxidation, or really keep oxidation in a normal range, because we don't want to have oxidative stress and then inflammation that typically comes due to oxidative stress. So hydrogen is a reducer. Oxygen is an oxidizer. Hydrogen is a reducer. If we keep them balanced, then we work on what's called homeostasis in the body, where we're keeping things functioning the way they're supposed to. So if, and this is a big if someone's gut is functioning correctly, which I would say is less than 3% of people walking around the planet, probably less than 2%. But if your gut was functioning properly, you have anaerobic microflora. And within these anaerobic microflora, you have what's called hydrogen trophs within the intestinal tract. Hydrogen trophs will convert short chain fatty acids, medium chain fatty acids, and fiber into hydrogen gas. And that's how we would normally get hydrogen gas naturally. We should be able to produce 10 to 12 liters of hydrogen gas per day in our gut. We call it flatulence, right? Nothing new there. We'll call it fart therapy, right? But the reality is, as we produce hydrogen gas, 30% of the hydrogen gas gets consumed by the hydrogen trophs as their energy source. And then 70% part goes out the tailpipe and part goes into the body to manage oxidation. So hydrogen is what's called a signal modulator. It is there to give direction like a manager. It's not going to do the heavy lifting, but it's going to give direction to all different pathways in the body so that they function the way they're supposed to, whether it's brain, gut, immune function, heart, all kinds of things. That's what hydrogen does. But the primary role is to reduce oxidation, which is critical because the combination of oxidative stress and chronic inflammation is the leading cause of disease. So when we look at disease models, what causes disease is oxidative stress and chronic inflammation. So the fact that hydrogen, the primary role is to keep oxidation in a normal range and prevent inflammation. This is basically hydrogen's job, is to prevent disease.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. That's awesome. We actually had the antioxidants on the show today. And I was going to reach out to Dr. Mike here, as someone that has followed antioxidants your whole life.
I can't.
John, let me
Yeah.
stop you. You have a significant amount of reverberation happening on your end. It's increasing as time goes on. Dr. Paul, could you talk about when you say that hydrogen is a signaling molecule? Is it epigenetic? Is it higher than the level of the epigenome? Is it system based? The presence of the hydrogen, is it supposed to happen in nature? Is that what is going on here?
Yes. So normally your body would produce it. So it would be modulating. And you're talking about just about every pathway. There's over 200 biomolecules that have been identified that hydrogen regulates. So it pretty much touches everything in the body. Everything from HCl, right? Stomach acid. HCl is hydrogen. If we really look at the building blocks of the body, it's carbon hydrogen chains. So you could argue that 62% of the body, hydrogen's involved with everything going on. And also from a perspective of what you'd call neuroprotective effects, we all know leptin and ghrelin, two master hormones in the body. Well, as soon as hydrogen's in the stomach or the gut, you will selectively stimulate gastric ghrelin, which will go to the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and the brainstem to change cognitive function. So it really comes down to a very core function in the human body, from not only gut repair, because when we give someone hydrogen, the hydrogen will actually repair the gut from an ORP perspective. And what I mean by that is to have the right biome or the terrain in the gut. It's all electrical. It's an electrical, what we would measure in millivolts. So you would need a negative 300 millivolts in the tissue of the gut so that strict anaerobes or anaerobic microflora can create communities. Hydrogen does that as well. So it's really mission critical for the body. It's critical for your immune function, for cognitive, for oxidation, for all of these things. And I would say that it's probably one of the most important things in the body. And some of the pathways that we see being regulated that many of the listeners might be familiar with would be NRF1, NRF2, SIRT1, telomerase. I mean, these are some of your basic antioxidant pathways in the human body, and hydrogen runs up and down these pathways to change. And with telomeres, for example, I think a lot of people are probably, that's why I'm bringing it up. Probably a lot of people on this call are familiar with telomeres or telomerase. That's a good indicator of anti-aging, how long the telomeres are. Well, the beautiful thing with hydrogen is hydrogen gas in a healthy cell will lengthen telomere length. But in a cancer cell, for example, it will shorten, which is really critical because you don't want duplication of a cancer cell. And we call that in medicine a haystack. But the reality is, you want a shortening telomere in a cancer cell. And we also want apoptosis to be functioning. And so hydrogen not only changes telomere length exactly the way you would want it to in a cancer cell versus a healthy cell, but also it benefits apoptosis so that these cells destroy themselves. So we're really getting to the core aspect of the body. Definitely, you're going to have epigenetic effects. Definitely, you're going to have effects because when we look at epigenetics, we're really looking at a response in the body to a number of different scenarios. Well, if we remove hydrogen, then those scenarios change because now all of a sudden we've got oxidation, we've got immune function issues, we've got deficits in the core system of the body. And so now the body is going to have to modulate or accomplish immune function or proper living through other ways. And that stresses the body out. So when we put hydrogen back in, now all of a sudden you have the body functioning the way it was designed to. And so your epigenetics, your autophagy, any of these other things that we talk about in biohacking or anti-aging will come back to the norm.
So thank you for that, Dr. Paul. I have a couple of questions, and I know that Dr. Mike and John, when he comes back on, do. For the purposes of audience members who aren't providers or aren't
Yeah.
in healthcare, could you
Yes.
please give it a brief overview
Sure.
of ORP and
Yes.
apoptosis?
Yes. So ORP is oxidation reduction potential. I don't think we fully understand what it is, but it is a measurement in water, for example, of the antioxidant aspect or the antioxidant ability. It really is a stored energy. It's not like you have voltage in the water, and we measure it in millivolts, but it's really not electrical potential. It's really a distance between a zero and another number. And for example, you can have positive ORP, which would show us that we have oxidative power or potential. And then you have a negative electrical potential that would show us we have an antioxidant potential. And again, you can think of it as a stored energy, and you could think of it as electrons. In our case, we have hydrogen, so that's going to create a negative ORP, but it doesn't guarantee you just because you have a negative ORP that you have hydrogen. So it's a little bit different. And then when we talk about apoptosis, apoptosis is a system in the body or a process in the body where if a cell is duplicating inappropriately, it is designed to destroy itself. And that's what apoptosis is. Somehow, when a healthy cell becomes a cancer cell, apoptosis no longer works. And so you no longer have these cells destroying themselves. So the fact that hydrogen, in many cancer studies, we have 114 studies at hydrogenstudies.com. You have 114 studies on different cancer types. And one of the main benefits is that you're benefiting apoptosis. So what that means is that these cancer cells are destroying themselves. And in one colon cancer study, for example, when you combined the chemotherapy drug with hydrogen gas in water, you had 100% cancer cell death. So this is a huge benefit, and hopefully that helps everyone understand. I'll try and use more layman's terms in going forward so that we
Well,
can have
just
everybody
a couple of key terms, Dr. Paul. For example, in biohacking, we understand that telomere length is linked to longevity,
Yep.
and telomere shortening is linked to aging,
Yep.
and premature death.
Yep.
And so, if I heard you correctly, what you had mentioned was that the introduction of gaseous hydrogen into the body has been shown to decrease telomere length of cancer cells. In other words, speed them towards their untimely demise, as we would hope,
Yep.
and to lengthen the telomeres of healthy cells or your cells to help to heal you faster and keep you younger. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
And also, you mentioned that the introduction of the gaseous hydrogen into the gut would improve cognition. Is that right?
Yeah, the cognitive function and neuroprotective. So there are studies on Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, autism, bipolar, schizophrenia, for example. And what it's showing is that there is disease modifying effects with Parkinson's, not due to hydrogen or what we call striatal hydrogen or hydrogen going to the brain, but it's actual ghrelin, gastric ghrelin secretions going to the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and brainstem. And it changes plasticity, it changes alpha and beta waves. So the actual function of the brain within 3 minutes, if someone is doing EEG or doing some other kind of testing on the brain, you can literally see the difference in the brain, alpha beta waves, as well as roughly a 32% plasticity change in like 3 minutes with only 16 ounces of water. So there are huge shifts in cognitive function or brain function. We do have a lot of people with ADD, ADHD who love the water because they feel clarity. They feel more clear in their mind and more focused.
I know that Dr. Mike has been struggling with neuroplasticity and cognition issues here, so we might want him one. Dr. Mike, did you have any questions for Dr. Paul? I'm monopolizing his time because I'm so fascinated by this subject.
No. I mean, Dr. Paul and I talked, of course, and I'm just listening. I don't necessarily have any questions at this point. I have one later, but I just wanted to, support his statements when he was talking about, free radical damage, right? And systemic inflammation being the number one cause of all disease. Even conventional medicine agrees with that. So what we need to do, obviously, is reduce that inflammation and free radical damage. And, everybody knows the story about if we get antioxidants in our body, like your vitamin C, D, glutathione, and all those types of things, then they will donate an electron to the free radical to stabilize it again. Unfortunately, when an antioxidant does that and gives the electron, it's done. Okay? Yeah. There's nothing else to do unless we have plenty of NADPH in our body. And NADPH is basically the battery of our cells. The mitochondria is the energy factory, ATP, but NADPH is the battery of our cell. In other words, it's an electron reservoir. So just imagine we have plenty of electrons and an antioxidant neutralizes the free radical by donating an electron. If we can give that same antioxidant another electron and another electron and another electron, that same antioxidant now can exponentially neutralize more and more free radicals. And that's why we need to have an ample amount of NADPH in our body. And guess what hydrogen water does? Guess what hydrogen does? Okay. Yep. It basically stimulates or increases the amount of NADPH in our body. So drinking this hydrogen water, basically guarantees that our body has ample electrons in the energy reservoir, so we can continue feeding the antioxidants in their attempt to neutralize free radicals. And so that's my explanation on how hydrogen is so effective in neutralizing those free radicals. So I just wanted to clarify that from the way I understand it, and maybe that helps some people out there. He obviously meant the gut. He explained to me in the past that, it's really not about, most people don't understand the gut. It's about the electrical potential. We need to be minus 300 millivolts. And so what that allows, it allows the anaerobic bacteria to to cultivate, right? To get a colony. And when that happens, within about 2 weeks, we basically reduce that inflammation. So for people that are listening that have dairy intolerance, lactose intolerance, gluten intolerance, after drinking this hydrogen water for 2 weeks, they probably could eat those foods again,
Yes.
because that's what this hydrogen water does. It allows to basically balance the gut with those good bacteria, colonize the anaerobic bacteria, and then get rid of that inflammation that was caused by those intolerances. So I think that's also like a support explanation to what Dr. Paul was saying. Then the other thing the last thing that I wanted to add to this, I guess, is that it's also very well known that hydrogen stimulates or promotes nitric oxide. And everybody knows that nitric oxide has many functions in the body. It's basically produced in many cells in the body, but it's mostly known in cardiovascular medicine as a vasodilator, right? So again, hydrogen stimulates nitric oxide in the body and prevents therefore many cardiovascular events and things like that.
Yeah,
So
beautiful.
that's what I wanted to add.
John, are you back?
I am back, guys.
So John, did you hear what we said, or do you want me to review it for you? So that
I heard most of it. I don't know if we're being throttled or censored, but it took a little while to get this working. So sorry about that. But I heard about the gut. The gut is so important. I would like to cover that in detail because a lot of people at home don't understand the level of health that they get just from having a healthy gut. Hydrogen seems to, we brought it up a couple times, it seems to be a simple solution, easy fix to help stimulate that the cells. Could you guys cover that in detail about?
Oh, the gut. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, Dr. Van Thielen just did a beautiful job. I want to honor him for a second because that was beautiful the way you said on NADPH. And, the beautiful thing on NADPH is that the electron transport goes back and forth. It's really a beautiful process from a redox potential and from a beautiful process in the body. Hydrogen and NADPH, and then the study that I read on that was on green algae, right? And how it produced back and forth. That was beautiful. And yes, I can verify 100% of people are drinking the water with hydrogen in it. You can repair the gut within 2 weeks and have people that are gluten and dairy. We have people that are 9 years never being able to touch gluten, and they can now eat gluten without any inflammation. And that's incredible. The reason that all happens is to what John is talking about, which is the fact that we're actually repairing the gut. I think many people take things that I call Band-Aids to get by in life. What I like to do as a professional is to fix the source problems. And in this case, it's most people don't understand that you can fix the gut with electrical potential. So getting hydrogen into the gut, hydrogen gas, H2, into the gut or the gastrointestinal tract, you can absolutely change the colon, which is what we're looking to accomplish. You can change the electrical potential to a negative 300 millivolts. And there's a really nice study that was done in Europe many years ago, 1992, that showing that you can rehab a gut or you can change. And what they were talking about is anaerobes, strict anaerobes or anaerobic microflora, which is the healthy bacteria that's supposed to be in your gut. That should be up to 96% of the bacteria in your gut, and only 1 to 4% should be aerobic. The problem is with one antibiotic use, what I call overuse of an antibiotic, or heavy metals, pesticides, glyphosate, any of these kind of things that destroy the biome and the terrain of the gut. Now, if you change the polarity of the tissue in the gut to a positive electrical potential, now you're going to have aerobic bacteria wanting to take up home. And this leads to anxiety, depression, and you can't process fiber and fatty acids. So people that have diarrhea, for example, when they're eating vegetables or salads, that you're having serious gut dysfunction, because if you can't process fiber, we have to get anaerobic microflora in back, because that's how you're going to process. If you have aerobic, you're going to want carbs and sugar. That's what it loves. So a lot of your food cravings are simply the bacteria you have in the gut. It's not your fault, it's the bacteria you have. So by drinking the water, getting hydrogen, changing the polarity of the tissue itself to a negative electrical potential, and specifically as close as we can get to a negative 300, negative 400 millivolts of electrical potential, oh my gosh, within an hour of drinking the water, you'll start to build the terrain and the biome. And within a 2-week period, you should, and in every case I've observed, it is able to, people are able to eat gluten and dairy and have no issue with inflammation. So this alone is critical. If nothing else you learned on this is the fact that you can help your gut, because 70% of immune function is tied to what bacteria you have in the gut, or what we call gut health. And so this can be a huge benefit. If there's nothing else we've learned in the last 3 years, it's that immune function is important. So I would say that, but that's how we're fixing the gut, is the hydrogen gas is actually doing that. And people are then going to say, and I can already hear them saying, well, gosh, if you're going to fix my gut in 2 weeks, can I just rent a machine for 2 weeks and then send it back when I'm done? And the reality is no, because unless you're going to promise me, I mean, really promise me, like prick your finger, blood, whatever the real way you're going to promise me, unless you're going to promise me that you're never going to eat food or consume a liquid again that has heavy metals, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, then no, you can't. Because every time you eat a food that's not organic or has pesticides, even, if it is sometimes organic, if it has pesticides, it's going to disrupt your gut. And if it disrupts your gut, now you're back to the same problem again. So drinking the water will cause your gut, if you do eat something with glyphosate, it's going to boost and going to help you again. So by drinking the water regularly, even though you might be eating things with heavy metals and pesticides, it's going to keep your immune function, it's going to keep your gut correct. So really, this is something that you drink for the rest of your life so that your gut can be proper, your brain can be proper, your cholesterol levels can be proper, diabetes, cancer, all the different studies that we have on disease models, you can not have to suffer those things. This is what we're really doing. And again, as we said earlier, it's about signal modulation. Even the gut is about signal modulation, because that's what we're doing. So I hope that helps people understand how critical hydrogen is, and why the creator, or why the great engineer that made your body made a hydrogen generator in your gut, because it is extremely critical to life and accomplishing your divine potential.
John, can I interject here?
Yeah.
So, Dr. Paul, first of all, thank you for that explanation. I would like a point of clarification.
Yes.
Is the restoration and repair to the gut the result of electrical terrain modification and correction alone, or does the hydrogen also supply energy through the NADPH pathway to help the connective tissue repair all simultaneously?
Yes, it is both. Absolutely, it is both. What's creating the terrain is the hydrogen and electrons. So it would be both. It's the electrons that accomplish the potential, right? It's the actual electrons. So the fact that they're going back and forth is important. One other thing I'd like to throw in here, just for giggles or fun, University of California, San Bernardino did a study having to do with peptides. And naturally occurring peptides are also signaled by hydrogen in the body. But what they found that's really interesting is these protons, the electron transport chain, when you have hydrogen in the body, goes up to a picosecond, which is a trillionth of a second. So if you look at their study that they did on hydrogen and peptides, or hydrogen and proteins, the fact that you have hydrogen in the body, you speed up the electron transport to a trillionth of a second, what's called a picosecond. And again, we're just learning. I would never say that we know everything, because as soon as we say that, it's inappropriate. But we are learning, and we're continuing to learn of all the mechanisms that are happening in the body. And when it comes to the gut, I think it's far more involved than we think. But we can say, yes, simply it's hydrogen and electrons. I think there's other things going on. I think catalase upregulation, when we talk about hydroxyl radicals in the mitochondria, I mean, there's a number of places we can go of how the body is getting energy and ATP and all kinds of things. But the reality that I want everyone to walk away with is that hydrogen is innate. Hydrogen is supposed to be in the body, and there are a million reasons why.
Thank you so much for that. John, are you there?
Yeah. So I had a question. There's all types of things going on with the body. We talked about the gut. That might be the most important aspect of the hydrogen water, but we didn't talk about sleep, brain health, or overall functioning of the body. As a result of using the hydrogen water daily, can you guys speak upon some of these added benefits? Because the gut's so important, but what about your sleep? What about some of these other items that are compounded when you're drinking hydrogen every
So,
day?
John, we talked a little bit about brain health when we were going through our technical difficulties. But if Dr. Paul, if you could talk about enhanced sleep and performance and recovery
Yep.
as it relates to the introduction of therapeutic hydrogen, I think that would be very interesting to the audience in general, but certainly to me specifically.
Absolutely.
You gotta
and
go
just
home
know,
after work, Dr. Carter.
what is it?
You gotta go home after work, Dr. Carter, to sleep.
Go big or go home, right?
Yeah,
Go hydrogen or go home, right? But
that's right.
here's the thing. We have many athletes, professional athletes and amateur athletes, that use our water specifically because they don't fatigue. We do have a number of studies on soccer players, professional, or what we'd call elite athletes. And what the studies showed is that there was no exercise induced muscle decline. This is what the actual studies show. And what they were saying is there was no lactate buildup in the muscle. Now, a lot of people believe you need lactate to grow muscle, but you really don't. The reality is lactate is a response. And what we see is that the fatigue level of the individuals was almost non existent when they were drinking the hydrogen water half an hour before they played. And so that was huge. We also see with many athletes, recovery times are cut in half. Well, that's obviously you don't have as much repair to do. And so many athletes will say, as I'm drinking the water after I've exercised or after I play, I can feel recovery happening in my body. So for those that are athletes, this is a huge, huge advantage. But I would actually say to you, don't think of this as a stimulant. Don't think of this as something you're going to do that you're going to enhance your body. You're just taking your body back to what it should have already been doing and naturally. And I would submit to you that when you watch the Olympics and certain people like athletes from Africa who are outperforming everyone else, I would say we probably ought to look at their gut. And I bet you they have an intact gut. And I think because they have an intact gut, their mitochondrial function is at peak. And so they're able to produce the pounds of ATP that they need to have locomotion or to be able to move their body from one point to another at a faster rate. So we can explain it from a mechanism perspective, but what I can tell you is whether you're doing an organic acid test, which for those of you who don't know who that is, you can go to a doctor's office and you can ask for an OAT test or an organic acid test. This will tell you where your mitochondrial function is. You can go get an organic acid test, and then you can get the water, and a few days later, you can get another one, and you can see the difference in mitochondrial function. Now, that's good for exercise. It's good for normal energy level. You need energy to heal. You need energy to function on this planet. And so the energy levels will be at peak, and you won't be tired 2 o'clock every day in the afternoon. For those that are elite athletes, of course, they're going to love this, and they're going to have this. For those that are just weekend warriors and what have you, or let's say you're the older population and you want to run a mile and you haven't been able to, we have so many people in their 60s and 70s that are now able to run a full mile that they weren't able to before, and they can feel comfortable, they can feel confident in themselves. So these are the kind of things from a sports or a performance perspective. As I said earlier, I think the mitochondrial help with hydroxyl radicals not forming. That's one thing hydrogen is known. There was a study done by Nature Medicine showing that hydroxyl radicals didn't form. I believe it's catalase upregulation, but we haven't had a definitive answer on that. But that's what I believe. Now we did talk about brain earlier. We talked about ghrelin secretions. We talked about clarity of mind. We talked about a neuroprotective plasticity. All of these kind of things. But let's talk about sleep. You need, believe it or not, you need energy to sleep. I think a lot of people fall asleep at night because they're exhausted. That's not really the appropriate way to fall asleep. That's not the most healthy. You should have appropriate energy so you can heal during your sleep. And that's really a new concept, I think, for most people watch their phone or a TV and then they literally like collapse into their bed and fall asleep. Might not be the most healthy way to go to sleep, but I would tell you that I would say at least 30%, 40% of people that drink our water the first time come back within a day and say, whoa, I had the best sleep I've had in 20 some years. Is that a benefit of the water? And we're like, yes, absolutely it is. So you can look up sleep on the hydrogenstudies.com, and you can see how many studies are there on sleep, but there are quite a few. And so just understand that that is a known benefit of that. And one of the things I would remind you is that when we talked about the neurologic or neuroprotective effects, we talked about ghrelin secretions. One of the roles of ghrelin as a master hormone in the body is circadian rhythm. And so you're going to have sleep benefits also because of the ghrelin secretions. And so I would submit to you that everything is tied together. I just looked up sleep, and it's 13 studies. So you have 13 studies that you could go through to look at sleep levels. And the first one you'll see will be individuals 70 years and older that were having a tough time sleeping. And they were looking at a 6-month hydrogen-rich water intake on molecular and phenotypic markers and aging. So you can you can start to read about that. But I hope that answers some of the topics we've just done on sleep, on brain, on recovery, and athletes.
Yes, Dr. Paul. I've tried a lot of different water systems. I actually distilled my water for almost a decade. I've tried different, like I said, different systems with pH and this type of thing. Can you give us the why synergy science? Why this hydrogen water? How are you differentiating yourself in the market? In regards to your technology and how your hydrogen water works over others?
Great question. Thank you. So we are the only true hydrogen water machine in the world. And that's a bold statement, I know. Let me preface that with why I'm saying that. To actually call a device a hydrogen device, you should be able to use distilled water and be able to dissolve a half a part per million of hydrogen gas. And the reason a half a part is chosen is because in the literature, in the studies, half a part per million is what has been accepted as a therapeutic concentration of hydrogen gas. So that doesn't mean that with less hydrogen than that, you won't have benefits, because we know ghrelin secretions were accomplished with 0.1 parts per million. However, half a part per million is considered therapeutic. And so the International Hydrogen Standards Association out of Japan, which is really where hydrogen started from, was Japan. Not hydrogen the gas, but hydrogen water, hydrogen as a application for improvement of health. If we look at the IHSA, International Hydrogen Standards Association, they say you must be able to use distilled water and you must be able to dissolve half a part per million. We are currently the only company in the world that makes water devices that has been able to accomplish that standard. We have IHSA certification, meaning that we can use distilled water in our devices, all of our devices, and we can dissolve half a part per million. Now, the reality was not only did we dissolve half a part, but we actually in the study at the third party laboratory that did that study for IHSA, we dissolved 1.58 to 1.88 parts per million. So we almost quadrupled their minimum, what their standard was. We tripled and almost quadrupled that result. So we're not only the only company in the world that accomplished the metric in the first place, or the certification criteria, but then we tripled and almost quadrupled it. So what's really critical is that we don't change pH and that we get hydrogen into the body. That is critical. And we're the only device that has accomplished IHSA certification. Your other devices that are considered alkaline devices, the inherent weakness with them is the fact that they will have minerals that build up on the cathode or on the electrodes themselves inside the machine that makes the water alkaline. When the calcium or other minerals bond, you can no longer dissolve hydrogen gas because the hydrogen gas bubbles coalesce, or they group together and get too large to actually be dissolved. So they will go right out to atmosphere and you won't get the benefits of hydrogen gas. In our device, in the device that I developed, we're always dissolving hydrogen gas. You never need to clean your machine, which takes 2 to 3 hours, to have hydrogen gas dissolved. So there are vast differences. Number one being the fact that the electrodes are never in contact with water, so you can't have minerals build up on them. Number two, you don't have heavy metals building up in your system because you don't ever have the electrodes in contact with the water. Number three, we're not changing pH to create a burden on your body. And number four, you know that you have purity. You don't have Brown's gas. You have H2 gas dissolved in water because we're sending the oxygen out to atmosphere. So the differences in our system are vast, and we are the only true hydrogen water. This is why you have many, many famous athletes. You have actors, you have actresses, you have people all over the world in the natural medicine industry that are the who's who. And from a doctor's perspective, they are all using our system because of that. The important thing to understand is when you have hydrogen, it's important. But imagine if you gave someone alkaline water and didn't give them hydrogen. Now you're creating a burden because every time you put the alkaline water into the stomach, the body is supposed to produce HCl to lower the pH back down. If you don't have hydrogen, you can't produce HCl. And so, again, this is why I'm saying you'd be putting a burden on that individual. Did you have a thought, Dr. Mike?
No, and the question just going along with this, because I know quite some people that learned about the benefits of hydrogen, but they are using those tablets and put it into water. So what I like you to explain, Paul, is what is the difference, or why would they invest in your equipment versus getting those cheap tablets and put it in their water daily? So that would be very helpful for many listeners, I think, if you could explain that.
Great question. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. That was a beautiful question. So interestingly, you said in cheap tablets.
compared to your investment.
Yes. So that's actually the most expensive way to get hydrogen, because you're spending anywhere from 60 cents to $1 for a tablet that can do anywhere from 8 ounces to 16 ounces of water. So when we look at water production in a machine like mine, you're talking 8 cents versus 60 cents to $1 for that same amount of water. Now, when we have, for example, when we have a device like this, the Echo Go, and I'm not, I really think the machine is far superior for gut recovery and everything else. But let's just take this into consideration. This is $149 retail. That's effectively 2, maybe 3 bottles of tablets, but this will last you for years. And even if you get a machine and you get a sport bottle, the Echo Go, you can take this when you're away from home. You can take it on trips. You can do whatever. You need to put pure water in here. And so from a cost perspective, it's far less money because it's a lithium ion rechargeable battery, and you're just putting water, push a button, 3 minutes later, you have hydrogen water. That's far better for a home than spending money on tablets. Now, the effect of the tablets is completely different than our water. For example, in a device like the sport bottle, in the bottom of the device is an oxygen port. inside of our machines, there's an oxygen port where you're moving the oxygen out. When you use the tablets, which is using elemental magnesium, you're not moving the oxygen out, and so they can recombine. So you don't know what you're ending up with when it comes to a chemistry perspective. You will have hydrogen gas, but you'll also have variations of oxygen, Brown's gas, a number of other things. And then, of course, you have the taste of magnesium because it's not all fully reacted. And so many people, when they try our sport bottle versus tablets, they'll always go with the sport bottle because it tastes pure and they're actually going to feel the benefits better.
All right, great.
John, I have questions, but do you have some first?
Now,
Yeah.
I do want to say before I do that, the tablets did accomplish IHSA. The tablets from Canada did accomplish IHSA certification as well. So, in full fairness and transparency, I don't want to make it seem like the tablets are bad. I just think the sport bottle is better. We used to sell tablets. We had pallets of tablets. We sold thousands of bottles of tablets. We went away from it because when we introduced the hydrogen, the Echo Go, which is a portable unit, people gravitated to that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, when I got my machine, I studied this many years, a decade before hydrogen. One of my favorite inventors, Patrick Flanagan, childhood genius. Now he's in his 70s.
Yeah.
He did a study in Japan, and how did these people live 100 years? He found that it was because of the hydrogen
Right.
that they were drinking. And so I've tried the pills, but I can tell you, this is my own review of after having your product, that, when I wake up in the morning and I take that first glass, everything seems to connect in me at such a level.
Sure.
I feel light. I feel a lot more energy. And like I said, I have had many different machines. And I just wanted to say that this machine that you created, beyond the tablet talk, it's just because this machine does all the work for you. And I'm just grateful to have this machine. I'm just giving my own testimonial after trying all these different products. Did you,
Well, thank you.
Dr. Greg, did you have a question?
I do. So earlier, Dr. Paul, you had stated that there are studies that indicate simply 16 ounces of the hydrogen water can start to benefit neuroplasticity and cognitive function in as little as 3 minutes. Now, what if I'm concerned about performance? If I want to go to the gym, should there be pre and post dosing? Is 16 ounces considered the standard dose? Could you speak to that?
Yes, there's no dose dependency, and I don't think there's ever been a dose established. I can just say that there are multiple studies that typically they were given someone 900 ml or 16 ounces per day. Like there was a study with type 2 diabetes mellitus and IGT. So it was type 2 diabetes mellitus and IGT, or impaired glucose tolerance. The individuals in the study, it was a double-blind, controlled study. They were given 900 ml per day of either placebo water or hydrogen water, and 80% of the individuals in the study were normalized. The blood glucose tolerance tests, and 80% of the individuals with IGT were also normalized. Now, we also saw a 15.5% reduction on LDL, oxidized LDL, these kind of things. But again, that just speaks to the fact that you're lowering oxidative stress systemically. I don't know that there's been an actual dose dependency or any kind of a dosage ever done. But I would say that most people that get the machine, probably 60% of the water they're drinking is out of the machine. And I think that would be fine. If we were to ask the question, how do we mimic the body? Because I always like to go to mimic the human body, what it does. We would typically eat 3 times a day. We might create flatulence 3 times a day. So as long as people are getting the water 3 times a day, I would say 16 ounces 3 times a day would be a great recommendation. But I would tell you that most people, they start craving the water, they want the water, and that's mostly the water they drink. But I don't want anyone to have anxiety or freak out if they're not having the water. because as long as you're getting the hydrogen in the system, there are some pathways that we're seeing a residual modulation up to 3 to 5 days. So I don't want anyone to be overly concerned and stressed out because they're not getting the hydrogen water. I would say the only condition that might have any kind of a dose dependency would be RA, because you have so many articulations or joints that are involved. And so there was a beautiful study on rheumatoid arthritis where there was no reoccurrence of RA or joint issues after hydrogen water administration. And so that was a good study. But the reason I say you might have a higher dose is because you have so many more joints. The more water you would get in the body initially, you could help more joints because it's all oxidative stress that you're trying to combat.
Well, guys, we've got a couple minutes left. Paul, where do we learn more about all this stuff, and how do we contact you or your social media?
Our main website is synergyscience.com. I know that we have a link because we're going to give people a discount. Those that are listening to this, we don't discount on our website, but we do discount for things like this, special podcasts and things. And so there is a link. Please use the link to get to our site. There's two things I want you to know. Synergyscience.com is the main website. Echo, ECHO, is the brand for the hydrogen water. We do have whole house filtration. We do have a reverse osmosis system that's tankless, no tank to, so you always have water making 1/4 gallon a minute. And then we have the hydrogen. That's what we specialize in. We do have filtration, but we specialize in hydrogen. So synergyscience.com, and then Echo is the brand. Now, hydrogenstudies.com is the website where there's 1,193 studies that you can search any disease model, condition, and I would say that's a good place also as a resource. If you have questions, will it help me with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? Type that in, and the answer is yes. There are studies on that. Any condition you have, go to hydrogenstudies.com, and then the main website is Synergy Science. Our toll-free number, 1-800-337-7017. We're happy to answer questions, and we're able to help you understand how this is going to bless your life.
Yeah, guys, if you guys want to be blown away from something that seems very simple like water, give it a shot. The code is on the bottom. I posted live everywhere. The link, you get 10% off. Click on that link. Take advantage of the product. Look like they have some different options there. And thank you so much, Dr. Paul. It was really a pleasure to have you on today. And can't thank you enough sharing your wisdom, your innovation to the world. And we made it a part of our kind of lifestyle modification, and couldn't be happier. So thank you again, Dr. Paul, for joining us.
You're very welcome. And just to tell people, when you're in the shopping cart, you can choose a firm if you want financing. So for those that want to pay a low monthly payment and have a machine in their home, there's no money down, monthly payments, 1 year, same as cash programs. It's all when you're in the shopping cart and you use a firm, which is a company like Walmart uses for financing. So I just want you to know we've tried to make it possible for everyone to afford and to have these systems in their home. It's been my honor, my pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Greg. Thank you, Dr. Mike. Thank you, John.
Paul.
It's been an honor.
Dr. Paul, do you have time after the show for a couple questions?
Yes.
Questions? Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Greg, co-founder Anti-Aging Bed, giving his advice and wealth of knowledge. And definitely thank you, Dr. Mike Van Thielen, giving us the down low on the medical science and information. So that's all we have. The tape is going to cut, but appreciate you guys so much. Check us out, Anti-Aging Bed at Dark, Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. John Baxter Live, 2 p.m. Wednesday. Thank you guys, and check us out.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
John, are we off?